Welcome back, Hot Nerd Network family. Today we are discussing Power Book 3, Season 3, Raising Kanan, Episode 7. I'm your host, Hot Nerd D, and today we have the lovely Hot Nerd Viv joining us. So say hi, Viv.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. So happy to have you here. But before we dive in, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated with all things Hot Nerd Network. But yes, let's get to it, starting first with our episode's recap. So this episode starts out with Ronnie threatening Paul if he were to snitch or tell the cops about his partnership with Kanan, that things would not end up so well for him. Famous interrupts them and hears firsthand what Ronnie is capable of. That was practically a foreshadow because 2 seconds later, we even see Ronnie ends up doing the exact same thing to Famous and explaining if he were to ever talk about what he knows, things wouldn't end up so well for him. And we even see that later on towards the end of the episode. Literally, he says the exact same thing to Pernessa in lack of other words. So Ronnie was on his streak of letting people know exactly, what could happen to them if they get on his bad side. Rock is continuing to build back up her business using the connections and relationships that Unique was also building on. She's trying to expand her business this time into multiple restaurants. So that's kind of like the new angle that she's approaching this with. The FBI is continuing to build a case where Rock, Marvin, and even Lou their names continuously are being brought up. They also have to worry about Scrappy's mom and with her confession from what Lou said last episode. But as we see later on in the episode,
we don't gotta worry about that anymore.
Right. And in order to control that, Lou ends up killing her by the end of the episode. So that is a big yikes that we'll talk about later. Marvin and Gerald's relationship continues to evolve, where he ends up even having to come to his rescue again. Jukebox is still in her girl group. However, we do still see her doing like the necessary steps for basic training. So we do see that she's still keeping that avenue open. And as we know, Jukebox to be in the original Power series, what route she ends up going. So this is kind of like the stepping stones for us to see that. Right. Her group member, Aisha, is dating Kanan. However, we see that she doesn't want to be with Kanan in the way that he wants her to be, even when she expresses and tells him exactly that she doesn't want to do that. He ends up leaving her essentially, or leaving her behind, and ends up getting with the other band member, which is a shake of my head for Kanan in this episode. Pernessa catches Ronnie with Juliana during this episode, so we'll see, if there will have any later implications or we'll see any later use for that. Detective Burke's dad meets with Detective Foyle to talk about Burke, to apologize, and to even try to get some answers as to what happened to his daughter. She definitely reiterates that she does not want to get it close to, some of the things that Burke was trying to, get out of Detective Howard and all those things that were happening. So we'll see, though, if, her dad will kind of leave it alone or if he's still going to pursue to try to get more answers there. And finally, Juke tells Rock all about Kanan's affairs. So now she is definitely aware of who he's working with and what he is doing. And so we'll definitely see we know for sure Rock is going to do something about that because she doesn't play too much about Kanan. So that is where I'll pause. So what stood out to you this episode, or what was one of your favorite parts?
Okay, I think one of my favorite, I guess the most surprising part was just how easily they killed Scrap's mom. Like, I wanted that to evolve more, or, I wanted them to build more tension or suspense with that. I feel like they cleaned it up too easily, but I'm hoping that they expound on that later, because it seems like we don't have as many like characters, and then the development of the characters that we do have is kind of lagging to me. Like they killed off what's his name? Like the guy who's the detective, his partner, and like everybody.
Burke. So that was Burke. Yep.
Yeah, so Burke. I'm wondering like how they're gonna close that loop, and I'm wondering like what's gonna be the resolution for Scrap and his mom too, because it seems like Lou is really spiraling right now.
Yep.
And I want to see how like his spiral culminates.
Yeah. You definitely touched on a lot of things that we're going to get into later. So I'm definitely going to put a pin on that, because we'll definitely get into that. And one of my favorite scenes too, or just overall, I think has been Marvin and his like growth and evolution. Like even seeing him cook breakfast for Gerald's two youngest daughters, or his two kids, after he found them outside, like staying in the car because Gerald, was doing what he was doing and, was neglecting his kids in the process. But, just to see him in a way just evolve again and like grow and, to be a support system for Gerald, or to even approach a lot of different things now with a lot more like rationale versus just feeling and versus just impulse. It's like, okay, wow, now we can see, like what, if you do put in those necessary steps, like it first started with his class, then it just, it started with, and then it kind of evolved with his relationship with Juke. And so, just to see like when you do put in some of those necessary steps, or when you do put in work, like you can see, a lot of like positive things come out of that. And he's like, even in some sort of way, like being an inspiration to his siblings, like to Lou, to Rock, kind of being like the middleman in a way between them, so things don't just completely erupt. And like we see, like when he's going out, like with these different meetings with Rock, like he's able to, explain certain points and, be able to kind of step in and help out. And so I'm just proud of Marvin. I feel like I've been reiterating that this whole season on all of these recaps. I just really am. And so I think like what you're talking about, like character development there, it's like, dang, like I hope we're also not like, I know that this has also come up too with past recaps, like, you're building us up to, love Marvin so much, kind of like similar to Unique, to see a similar demise or, something bad happening to him later on. Like that's gonna hurt. That's what I'll say. That one's really gonna hurt. Unique already did, but
already hurt. Do you feel like he's really dead though?
I keep saying I'm gonna keep hope alive because we didn't find the body yet. Like we didn't see it actually happen. We did see, the impact, and we definitely know that Ronnie, did what he did, and it was bad, and that scene was, a bit hectic. But I still say it's like until I see the body, that is when that'll be the confirmation for me. But everybody's maneuvering and going on as if he's already dead. So I don't know. It's just one of those like gray areas, like at the end or maybe even some later season, like see him pop back up, like where'd you come from? I thought you was dead.
That would be interesting. Especially with Rock seizing his territory and like entering back into the game. Honestly, like her little break, that threw me. Her not being able to be a landlord in the speech that she gave when she was like, I'm done doing what I did. I did that. I'm different now. Okay, girl. Like you said a whole lot of nothing. Just say you want to sell drugs again and like be okay with that. Like
no, we definitely saw, Rock definitely go back on her word a lot in this particular season, especially in that regard. Especially because then, like you said, like a couple episodes or even last episode say like, well, this is just what I do, so I'm gonna just go back, to what is natural to me or what, feels as though like this is what I'm good at. And it's like, well, then you should have just never stopped. If you needed to say it to yourself, say that. But just to kind of go back and forth. So that even brings up
or she shouldn't have announced that she was leaving the game. She could have just like laid low and then reappeared or something.
Take your break, just take it to yourself. I think people would
need rest too.
But no, Rock, she's very much like direct and tries to be as clear as possible. So it's almost like to her, it's like I'm either in or I'm out. There's no breaks. I don't, there's no leisure. There's no, there's no good things to life. It's either you're in the business or you're not. And that's just how she kind of just sees things. And but even just in this, like, I feel as though beforehand, like she had a little bit more control, I would say, over like her place in the business. But I think now that even like when her supplier was saying like last episode, like, okay, well, there is no like going out this time. Like the only way out is like literally out, like being eliminated. And so I think now like the stakes even are just a little bit different. Like I feel as though she was always going to probably be pursuing this and be within this industry or doing this business, but I think that just kind of put it more into perspective too. Like, okay, now she really also doesn't have a choice. Not to say that she had, a whole lot of choices beforehand, but now I think it's just a little bit more clear as to you don't have, like you can't take any more breaks. There's no more breaks after this.
There's no more breaks to take. Like you're really in it.
Exactly. Which is going to be interesting to see, how that continues to grow and like how and what she'll have to do, to also maintain this business. But, of course, her still number one priority is going to always be Kanan. Or so we see as of right now. So.
And speaking of him, I think it was interesting to see him like go down a darker path with Ronnie. I feel like he's using him as like a henchman to try and keep like the biker, the courier business guy in line. You see him threaten Famous and like, try and tell him he has to leave. Like, I don't know. I just feel like Ronnie is going to be a terrible, terrible influence on Kanan. Like, as he's already just, getting darker and darker and darker.
I agree. And you definitely touched on another point as well. Like when we talk about the characters and just, what even just like lack of feeling or lack of like empathy, like what it will turn or like what it'll turn you into. And it's like, I think, it's just worth discussing like how, Ronnie has been this character who has always expressed, or just even lack thereof, like any sort of emotion, any sort of empathy, any sort of compassion. And so it's almost like you said, like we're seeing like Kanan almost adopt his behaviors or even maybe to some degree, like use him like as a shield for, like for those deep kind of behaviors that he probably always had inside of him and, just didn't really had the opportunity yet to kind of express that or to really act upon. But now, that he has Ronnie there and, this is obviously we see comes so easily to Ronnie, like he's like, okay, like now this is almost like an easier like transition for me to like kind of move in and, either act or either adopt some of the things that he's doing or really just act upon some of those like darker kind of thoughts that I always wanted to, but just didn't think it was possibly like appropriate or didn't want to cause or raise too many like red flags with it.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. And then going back to what you said about empathy, I feel like this might have been the episode before, but Rock's talk with Lou in the bar when he was like in tears talking about like, this is what you did to me. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It just seems like everybody is so hardened to what's going on around them that if you try to emote or express anything, that it's automatically suppressed. And I kind of feel like that feeds into why Jukebox can't feel comfortable just like enjoying the girl group. She still has to have like the army as her backup plan.
Yeah.
But I also feel like something may go wrong with that because even in the previews of the show, like when they show, I don't know, previously on Raising Kanan, they said like, I don't know, they showed that scene where she was with the doctor, and the doctor was like, "Oh, are you pregnant?" And she was like, "Nah, like ain't no baby in there. I can't be pregnant." And I just hope, like, I don't know, I feel like maybe that was foreshadowing because they focused so much on that part, you know?
Ooh, that would be interesting because it's like we didn't see in the original Power Show, or not that I remember, her having a child, and so it would be interesting if that, could have been a catalyst, or that, like you said, like is like a major kind of part also to how even Juke turned very dark. Like we know Juke, like we see her now, like in this like developmental stages, with her at first, like aspiring to have a lot of, dreams, wanting to be a great singer, just had a lot of great things going for her. But, as we do see kind of like the evolution into the original Power series and how dark she definitely was in that show, it's like, like you said, like there had to have been, I mean, of course, we see throughout this whole season and throughout this whole show, anyways, like what could have drove Juke to do those things. And, like she actually has a lot of, things to kind of pick and choose from. But at the same time, just have like something, like a bit more where she can't like kind of like snap back from, or like really navigate through, like that being such a huge like moment or catalyst for her to like transition into like darker Juke, or where the character, at least that we remember her to know, or like how we know her in like the more current day or in the past, because we also do know that she is dead by her own cousin too, which which will be interesting to see too, like like I feel like this episode in particular was like that first time like we actually see like real friction between them, like between Kanan and Juke. And because we don't know, like from the original show, like before they got like before they met back up to like team up to team against Ghosts and all that, like if they had any sort of like problems beforehand, or if there was like like a large gap or separation, that part I would probably have to go back and like rewatch to like really understand. But it does set the tone, at least in this show, and especially in this episode, like that starting point of them like having that like separation, and them just having those like kind of like friction points, because it wouldn't make sense, for them to have this like close and intimate bond, and then we see later on that you're the one that actually kills her, without anything actually happening between them. So I think that this episode is kind of like introducing us to like some of the problems and like kind of those like friction points that they did actually have that led to him even, wanting to consider that over, in a way, consider choosing Tariq over her in the end, which I still think is kind of crazy. But
like they haven't bridged that gap accurately yet at all. I also want to see how she becomes a cop, because now that Burke is dead, like I kind of thought that was going to be like her segue into working in law enforcement or whatever. But yeah, now that she's dead, I just want to see like what's going to happen. How did you become a cop? Okay, like she died. She was trying to get you to like inform on your cousin, and you were like, oh no, I don't like you. You're the police. Like, okay.
Right. And then, I mean, I guess it does make sense that then Detective Burke is not her, like, mentor, only because, we see Burke was trying to be more on the, like, honest path and, like, to, actually try to get real justice for the things that were happening. However, like, we know Juke is, a dirty cop in how we know her to be. So it's like, it does make sense, that she probably did go under somebody else's wing that, did kind of introduce her more to a more negative side of it than her, like, kind of taking a more positive route with that.
That's a good point. And I guess I wonder, what's Kanan's father's name again?
It's Howard.
Yeah,
Detective
Howard, Detective Howard. So I want to know, like, does it ever come about publicly that Howard is Kanan's father? And then maybe Juke joins the police force to kind of like keep him in line.
That would be interesting because the family knows now. I don't think it's like public knowledge that that's
Right.
his father, but yes, I do know for sure Marvin knows, and probably Lou do know that that's his real dad. But at the same time, like you said, we don't know the extent of that, or what they may have to do, to protect themselves against him. Because, I mean, for the most part, as we see him right now, he is trying to be more like keeping them safe, because ultimately that keeps him safe because he's just so heavily tied to all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, no, I don't trust Detective Howard. I don't trust him
Not
at all.
at all.
He would definitely, I know for sure, maybe not Kanan because that's his son, but would throw the rest of them, like under the bus to save himself and possibly to save
in a heartbeat.
Right. So that would be interesting if Juke is the one that kind of stops him from that.
Does Rock know that he's the one who killed Burke?
Either she does, or honestly, I don't even know if she cares how she died, the Detective Burke. But I mean, I don't think she's buying, all of a sudden she just, she's asking all these questions and then she, takes her own life. Like, I don't think that those two really are, adding up to Rock. Like, I'm pretty sure she knows that he had something to do with that, and, is just trying to cover things up and to try to keep things as smooth. But I don't think that she's or that she's necessarily worried about that. But to that point, like, they're not aware that the dad, is still curious as to what really happened. And so that could be another angle as to how, Bert continues to kind of stay relevant, and how she, continues to come up, and how, is anybody else besides her? Because she actually connected all the dots before she died. Like, will anybody else be able to do the same thing that she was able to do, and actually kind of get some real results from it, and not, or, not die before something actually happens of it.
Exactly.
So, interessante. We definitely just cover a lot, because it makes me think of going into some of the themes and symbolism, like throughout the episode, like and how important, like, guilt, because I know we talked about Lou, and and how you talked about how just having some sort of expression, or just being able to try to kind of release in some way, and how that plays a lot into guilt, or the start of even trying to release something, or even the motivation to release it, is stemming from that feeling of deserving some sort of blame, or deserving something from the actions that we do. So how would you describe the elements of guilt, and how, in a way, it kind of can lead you to different routes? It can lead you to either feeling numbness, or like feeling that kind of lack of feeling, like we'll get into, like, when we talk about the characters, or it could just also sometimes, like, even just kind of make you stay focused, and like make you almost, to me, like, kind of thinking of Rock, and how she, like, takes her guilt and almost, like, makes it work for her, and to a degree, like, and it, like, forces her to just try to be, like, a bit more focused, because she doesn't want to kind of focus on any aspect of blame or even deserving it. So what would you kind of say is your idea of guilt in
I
the context of
think
this episode?
it seems to me like Rock uses her guilt to like push forward. She like when she's talking to Lou, how she's always like, I did that. I gotta live with that. I just gotta keep going. Blah 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 blah
Yep.
blah. Like she doesn't really sit in it or like let it be something that marinates or like eats away at her. She just kind of like tucks it away and tucks it away and tucks it away.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. That's like in direct contrast to Lulu, who is just kind of like a raw nerve.
Yep.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if his guilt literally eats him alive and like he commits suicide or something before the end of the season. Because what happened with his confession to Scrap's mom and then having to go back and then kill her was terrible.
Yep.
Um and then I kind of feel like Marvin, he's like kind of trying to balance in between the two, like going to his I don't know, his like anger management sessions, his relationship with his friendship with Gerald or whatever. Like he tries to vent and get it out, and
Yeah.
it's more so like crisis management. Yes, this is who I am. I've done terrible things. I'm trying to be better.
Mm.
I'm still doing terrible things, but I'm also like, I don't know. I feel his guilt, his guilt has duality in a way. Um,
Mm.
and then Rock and Lou are like the two extremes.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree for sure, especially where Rock in a way sometimes like doesn't want to acknowledge, the guilt that she feels, or, almost takes it as a sign of pride. Like, yes, I've done all these things, or yes, I can hold myself accountable, but, why can't anybody else? Like, I am not the only one, like doing these sorts of things. So, in a way, like it could be taken as like almost like a sense of pride to her, like I am actually able to handle all these things. I don't have to go and run to my different vices, whether for Lou like drinking, or even for Gerald like going to drugs, like
Yeah,
with his kids. Like I don't have to do all these things to kind of hold it all together. But at the same time, it's like you're also developing other things that aren't really helping you either. Like it's a lot of that is clouding your judgment as well, because you're developing a lot of bitterness, like you're
hmm
developing a lot of anger. And like we were just talking about, like, yes, those kinds of things can keep you focused and on a mission, but that's also at the expense of your relationships, because like you said, like now her and Lou are at odds, her and Kanan are at odds. Like, thankfully Marvin is, like you said, like trying to, to a degree accept the guilt, or like accept the things that he has done, try to express it, and then try to move approach things in a
yeah,
different way. Of course, yes, we do still see him doing the heinous things that he has to do for the business and for his family and things like that. But just the aspect of like, okay, I can, because I think that is what the main like difference is between Lou and Rock, is like Lou is able to express it, but he's not really able to kind of like navigate through it. And Rock,
yeah,
she can't express it at all, and it's kind of just on autopilot trying to stay focused on her business. And whereas we do see Marvin in a way, like you said, in the middle, like on one hand acknowledging and feeling his feelings, because it reminds me of that scene when he was talking to the bar owner last episode, like
yeah,
when he, like almost when he thought he messed up Juke's like not audition, but like whether she'd be the lead singer or not. And, how he just sat there like sad, like, okay, I'm going to, I feel that guilt of, possibly messing up her dreams, but at the same time, like how I'm going to move forward with this is like, okay, one, I'm still her dad, so it's just the excitement that I have, but I know I do have to put some boundaries there so that way, I don't overstep and do those sorts of things next time. I think those were even
Exactly.
like some of the things we saw him try to even say to Gerald in this episode, like, hey,
Yeah.
I know that, things are hard with you right now, but you're not alone. Like
Mm-hmm.
you do have a support system. So it's like on one hand, it's okay that well, it's not okay that, like you leaving your kids outside in the cold in the car so you could, do what you do in the house, but at the same time, like I am going to give you space to actually accept that and then be able to give you a chance to grow from it versus like I don't think Lou or Rock really have either of those spaces to kind of do that. They don't have like the space to really do those sorts of
Yeah.
things. So
I also feel like none of the other siblings compartmentalize as well as Rock.
yep.
Oh, and then those two police officers that are like harassing her, or her storefront or
Mhm.
business or whatever. I'm waiting to see what's gonna happen. Like, I don't know. I just feel like now that she's back in the game, the season's gonna get a little bit more exciting because it's been kind of slow without her. Like, I don't know, selling drugs and stuff. It's
So
just been
space,
kind of
yeah.
like everyone else is not as interesting a character as her. So I feel like they have to give her more to do so that the show like moves along.
hmm That's an interesting point because, like you said, like she can't just take on one of unique story. She could have just take on that. She's like, I always have the bigger plan, or I always have the ideas of expansion, and so now
Yeah,
we see just how far. Because at first, even from last season it was them expanding into the different buildings and then being
yep,
able to like set up the different apartments and stuff to like okay if like the police are coming like drop the drugs downstairs, all those types of like maneuvers
mhm,
and tricks and stuff that she had. And so like you said, like yes, Rock is always like gonna take something and then expand it and make it bigger, more dynamic. And so like you said, and that always does add to a bit of interest, or like that does add a bit more like you know pizzazz to it, as you
yeah,
could say.
yeah. She gives it some razzle dazzle.
Right. Because even like on that point of guilt, I feel like what it does ultimately like lead to is either just this like feeling of numbness or just like lack of feeling overall. And so um how would you describe like the characters in that context, because it really just makes me think too of Lou and how that evolution of like we were just talking about, like I do have all these feelings, I have all this guilt, I really do feel bad for the things that I've done, but at the same time it's like I'm almost so overwhelmed with it that I can't even feel anything about it anymore.
Right.
I or feeling anything of it really, kind of just sends me into like a spiraling mode. And so and I think that's what, he just had to almost like lean into like when he killed Scrappy's mom. Like at this point, I can't even take on, another, aspect of this. Like I am sorry that this is how this has to be, but I have to do this. And in a way, like he's been like grappling this whole, I think, season with that idea of like, I have a choice, or I had a choice, or I didn't have
Yeah.
to do that. But, and then like we see now, it's almost like when you just don't have any much more to give. Like now I don't even want to feel, anything anymore. I don't even want to feel what it's like to take on, that responsibility of making
But
that choice.
I also think he wasn't telling the truth when he said he wanted to leave the game. Because if he really wanted to just leave the game and like run his bar, he could have done that and confessed the killing to like, I don't know, a priest or a therapist. Like he could have went to church. He could have went to therapy. Like
Mhm.
you didn't have to tell Scrap's mom on yourself. That means you wanted to be back in the game a little bit. I feel like that was a form of self sabotage. Because like Rock and Marvin are gonna find out and like what's gonna happen.
Right.
I don't know. I
Right.
feel like he can't. I think every season we see him trying to do music, but not really. Like, he has one foot out the door, but like he'll say, "Oh, I want to do music. I love music. I'm a musician." Blah blah blah. Okay, then just like leave the game alone. Like, don't talk about it. Get a therapist. Like, just do your day job. Like, leave it alone completely.
But it's almost like, in a way, he tried to do it all. Like, he tried to be, the good brother that supports his family, that's in, that understands what, comes with this business, and, trying to do his part, but at the same time, just wanted a little something for himself. And, when Rock imposed herself saying, that's actually not going to happen. You don't get a life. No, none of us do. Like, it just, kind of changed the whole, I guess his like mindset of how he viewed everything. Because he's like, wait, I'm only doing this because you asked me to, or like because I in some sort of way need to, but this is what I want to do. And now that I can't do what I want to do, it's almost like, what is everything even worth? This is all, nothing's worth it anymore in a way. Right. And I think that's what we're like seeing him kind of evolve or devolve into, for real.
It's bad.
Right. And then even just like the lack of feeling, like we hinted on, like like we are experiencing now with Kanan and Ronnie, and how, them not feeling anything, and how, how that's going to lead them, or where they're going to end up, like overall, because, not having any sort of feeling, like, made like kind of like Rock to a degree, like make it keep you focused for a moment, but something's going to be sacrificed, in between that. So it will be interesting to see how this season continues. I know we discussed a lot of predictions, but do you have any further ones or any last minute ones that you think are going to happen either next season? I mean, not next season, but next episode, or the rest of the season?
I don't know where they're going with this. I really don't know. I can't call it.
I see. I know. It's like all those things that we thought, or predicted were gonna happen. We keep trying to, we just kind of keep getting turned on our head for what is. So, like you said, I just wonder. I think Rock is gonna have to do something to Ronnie before everything kind of gets out of control, or that's just not going to end up well for, I think, anyone. I still think Detective Burke's dad, he's a bit too curious now, and I think Will, is not going to be intimidated by Howard like Detective Foyle was, Burke's girlfriend. So I don't know. We shall see. We definitely touched on a lot, so I am excited for that. But that will be a wrap for this week's recap. Thank you again for joining us, Viv. Always a pleasure to have you here. And don't feel shy. Please definitely come back if you would love to do that.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. But yes, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated with all things Hot Nerd Network. And remember to stay tuned for next week's recap of Power Book 3, Raising Kanan. We can't wait to see where their story takes us. But until then, stay nerdy.